my not-so-nice neighbor. In 2018, I moved into a small, two-story property in England with my then-boyfriend. It was in a quiet cul-de-sac with houses crammed together, all facing each other. I am very introverted and don't typically socialize much with neighbors. Still, we naturally ran into a few and exchanged pleasantries, as you would, right? One of our new neighbors, Greg, was incredibly welcoming right from the start. He was an older gentleman, the kind who would stop you for a chat that would drag on and on until you made up an excuse for why you really had to get going. He shared local stories, asked about and took note of our birthdays, and even invited us to a garden party where anyone and everyone was welcome. His house was directly across the street from mine, with his windows in clear view of mine. A couple of years went by, and during this time, my boyfriend and I split up. Although I never expressly shared this news with my neighbors, word must have gotten around when his car stopped showing up in the driveway. He moved out and left the country, but we stayed in touch regularly as friends.